The first time I saw one of the buried files, it wasn't in a courtroom or a museum. It was in a damp basement where the air tasted like pennies. Sealed in a box marked "Do Not Archive." Inside was a photo so old the faces had softened except the eyes. The eyes were still watching. If you enjoy true horror stories whispered from the dark, don't forget to subscribe, if you dare. Welcome to Mr. BlackWhisper. I took the night clerk job because it was quiet, and quiet felt safer than people. The building was an old county annex that used to be something else, back when records were paper and secrets were heavy enough to stack. My desk sat under fluorescent lights that never fully warmed up. The hallways beyond the glass doors were long and clean, but the kind of clean that feels like it's hiding rot bleach and old plaster soaked into decades. My job was simple: log deliveries, sign for boxes, keep the front door locked, and stay awake until morning. Most nights, nothing happened except the occasional patrol car drifting through the parking lot like a bored shark. Then the basement started calling my name without actually calling it. It began with small things that could be blamed on fatigue. The elevator would arrive on the first floor with no one inside, its doors opening like it had been sent to fetch me. A cold draft would slide under the lobby doors even when the weather was still. Sometimes, I'd smell cigarette smoke stale and trapped despite the building being smoke-free for longer than I'd been alive. On the third night, I found a ledger on my desk. It was thick, leather-bound, and dusty enough to leave a brown smear across my fingers. No shipping label, no delivery slip, just a book that looked like it belonged in a courtroom from the 1940s. I should have reported it. I should have locked it in lost and found and kept my hands clean. Instead, I opened it. The pages were filled with tight handwriting and dates that ran back decades. Names, times, brief descriptions. Some lines were mundane Menin's inventory, file transfers, things that sounded official. But every few pages, the tone shifted. The entries became too personal, too precise, like someone describing a moment they couldn't stop replaying. A name appeared again and again near the bottom of those darker entries, always written with the same pressure, like the pen had to dig into the page to get it out. Mara Hollis. Under it, a date from almost 50 years ago. Then a single sentence: moved to basement, for quiet. That was when I felt it something subtle in the building changing, like a breath being held. I tried to laugh it off. Old book, weird note, probably from some retired clerk with a flair for drama. But the air in the lobby had gone colder, and the security camera feed showed a faint haze drifting at the end of the hallway that led to the elevator. I stared at the monitors too long. My eyes started to burn. When I looked away, the elevator pinged. The doors slid open. Inside, on the back wall, someone had scratched a word into the brushed metal with a key. Quiet. I didn't go in. I sat at my desk and listened to the elevator doors close again, soft as a mouth shutting. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about the basement. The building had what most old county places do. It housed dead files, old furniture, things no one wanted but no one dared throw away. At 2:17 a.m., the power flickered just once. The lobby lights stayed on, but the security monitors went black for a heartbeat and came back with a stutter. When the image stabilized, one of the basement cameras was showing live. It hadn't been on my list. There was no basement cam 6. The feed was grainy and dim. A concrete corridor, pipes overhead, a row of metal shelves that disappeared into shadow. And at the far end, so far it almost didn't register, something pale hung from a ceiling light, swaying slightly like it was suspended by a thin wire. I leaned closer. It was a file tag, a rectangular strip of paper, yellowed and curled, dangling from a string. It was labeled in faded ink. Hollis, Mara, closed. The swaying didn't stop. It was too steady, too patient. My throat tightened. I reached for the radio, the one that connected me to the roaming security guard. I pressed the button, ready to ask if he'd been messing with the cameras. But the radio was already warm, as if it had been in someone else's hand. A soft hiss bled through the speaker. Then a voice, thin and tired, pushed its way into the static. Not words, not at first. Just breathing. Slow, controlled. Close, I jerked my hand back and the radio clattered onto the desk. The breathing continued, unbothered by the distance between us, as if the sound wasn't traveling through air, but through attention. The elevator pinged again. This time, it didn't open on the first floor. The floor indicator changed by itself. B basement. I stood without meaning to. My chair rolled back a few inches, the wheels whispering. The building felt awake now. Not in a dramatic way, more like the way a sleeping animal wakes when you step too close. Everything was still, but the stillness had weight. I grabbed my flashlight and told myself I was only going to check the elevator to make sure it wasn't stuck, to do my job. That lie tasted metallic. The hallway to the elevator was darker than it should have been. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, but their glow didn't reach the corners. The elevator doors were open. The car waited like a square mouth. The smell inside wasn't oil or dust. It was something older. Paper, mildew, and a faint sweetness underneath, like flowers left too long in water. I stepped in. The doors slid shut behind me with a finality that made my skin prickle. No buttons lit. The panel was dark. And yet the elevator moved. It descended smoothly. No jolt, no complaint. Just a quiet drop into the building's buried layer. I kept my flashlight pointed at the seam of the doors, as if I could catch something trying to squeeze in. When the doors opened, the basement corridor was colder than the lobby by at least 10 degrees. My breath showed in a thin ghost that vanished quickly, as if the air didn't want proof I'd been there. The shelves lined the corridor. Boxes stacked and labeled in old handwriting. The silence down there wasn't empty, it was packed tight, like insulation. At the end of the hall, the ceiling light flickered. Beneath it, a single metal chair sat facing the wall. Something was on the chair. File box, open. Inside, a bundle of photographs. I approached like I was walking into a crime scene I couldn't afford to disturb. The beam of my flashlight caught the edges of the photos. The glossy surfaces warped with age. The first photo showed a woman in a plain dress sitting on a chair, her hands folded in her lap. Her hair was dark. Her face looked calm, almost relieved. The next photo was the same woman, same chair, except her head was slightly turned, as if she'd heard something behind her. The third photo. Her eyes were wide, not screaming, not crying. Just wide with the realization that whatever was behind her wasn't a person. In the fourth photo, the chair was empty. In the corner of every photo, written in pencil, Mara Hollis transferred. My fingers trembled as I turned the last photo over. On the back, in handwriting that matched the ledger upstairs, "We kept her down here because upstairs had too many years. She asked for quiet. We gave her silence." I felt something shift behind me, so slight, it could have been my own balance changing. The air turned denser, colder at the nape of my neck. My flashlight beam wavered. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to, because the silence behind me wasn't empty anymore. It had shape. It had intention. And in that heavy, patient quiet, I understood what buried for decades really meant. It didn't mean forgotten. It meant stored. Waiting. I left the photos where they were. I walked back down the corridor without running, because running would have admitted I was prey. The elevator doors were open when I reached them, like it had been waiting too. Upstairs, the lobby lights looked harsh and wrong, like daylight in a room where someone just died. I quit the next morning. No notice, no explanation. Weeks later, I heard they remodeled the annex. New security system, new locks, fresh paint. But someone told me, laughing like it was nothing, that the basement had to be sealed off because the contractors kept finding old file tags, hanging from strings swaying under lights that weren't connected to power. And sometimes, when the building is quiet enough, you can still hear the radio breathing. The ledger was never delivered. It was returned. I worked nights in a hospital because nights don't ask questions. The corridors were calmer after midnight. The machines still beeped, the floors still shined, but the human chaos thinned out. You could walk from ICU to radiology without weaving through families and doctors and grief. I was a transporter moving patients, moving equipment, moving bodies when the work got too quiet to name out loud. On my first week, I noticed a door near the old wing that didn't match the others. Same beige paint, same metal handle, but no room number, no signage, no record of it on the wall map. It's just a clean, blank rectangle, like someone erased it and forgot to repaint the outline. I asked a nurse about it once, casually, as if it didn't matter. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then away. "That wing's closed," she said, and her voice got smaller at the end, like she hoped the hallway wouldn't hear her. Closed wings still have signs. Closed wings still have caution tape, or dust, or stacked beds. This door looked freshly wiped. Over the next few shifts, it started to pull at my attention the way a loose tooth pulls at your tongue. I'd pass it and feel a faint chill in my chest, a subtle pressure in my ears, like standing too close to a deep tunnel. One night around 3 a.m., the overhead lights in that stretch of corridor dimmed for a second and came back brighter. When they brightened, I saw something that made my stomach go cold. A shadow under the door. Not like a normal shadow from overhead lighting. This one was too thick, too steady. As if someone stood on the other side, blocking light that shouldn't have been there. I slowed down, pushing an empty gurney, the wheels whispering over the polished floor. I told myself it was nothing, another staff member, maybe maintenance. But there was no sound, no footsteps, no rustle, just the gurney and my breathing. When I reached the door, I saw the handle had a thin film of condensation on it, like cold breath had touched the metal. The air in front of the door smelled faintly of antiseptic and something else, old linen that had been stored too long, and a sweetness like dried flowers in a sealed book. My hand hovered. I didn't touch the handle. I kept walking because hospitals have a way of punishing curiosity. In a place full of sickness and death, you learn fast which questions don't have safe answers. The next night, I got an order to transport a patient file to radiology paperwork, not a person. The slip had a room number typed in bold. Room 0, not 100, not B12, not anything that belonged to a real floor. Just 0. I looked at the clerk at the desk, waiting for him to laugh and admit it was a mistake. He didn't. His eyes were bloodshot from night shift exhaustion. He stamped the form without looking up. "Just take it," he muttered. "Don't leave it here." My fingers tightened around the envelope. 'Twas heavier than paper should be, as if something inside had weight beyond the pages. I walked the corridor with the blank door, and my skin crawled before I even reached it. The shadow under the door was back. This time, it shifted slightly, like someone on the other side had leaned closer. My mouth went dry. The hospital noises felt distant, muffled, as if the air thickened around that doorway. I set the envelope on the floor in front of the door. The handle moved, not fast, not aggressive. Just a slow turn, like a careful hand testing whether it was locked. I stumbled back a step. The gurney behind me creaked softly, betraying me with noise. The handle stopped. Then it turned the rest of the way. The door opened a few inches. A breath of air rolled out, cold, stale, and carrying a smell that didn't belong in a modern hospital. Damp plaster. Old blood cleaned too many times. The faint temps of formaldehyde. Beyond the gap, the room wasn't dark. It was lit, but the light was wrong, yellowed, dim, like an old bulb struggling in a forgotten basement. I should have run. Instead, I leaned forward because my brain needed to prove it was still in reality. Inside, the room was small and bare, with one hospital bed in the center. The bedsheets were neatly tucked like someone had prepared it for a patient who would never arrive. And the walls were covered in paper records, pinned like wallpaper. Hundreds of them. Yellowed charts, old admission forms, autopsy reports, handwritten notes, dates from decades ago. This wasn't a room. It was a storage place for the hospital's shame. At the foot of the bed, a metal tray sat on a stand. On the tray was a single object, a wristband, white plastic. Faded ink, a name printed on it, barely legible. Evelyn Marrow. Under that, a date from the 1960s. And under that, in tiny hospital font, discharged. But something about the wristband felt wrong. It wasn't lying flat. It was stretched, like it had been pulled tight around a wrist that was still wearing it. I heard a sound then, deeper in the room. Not a voice, not a moan. A soft, repetitive squeak, like rubber soles shifting slowly against a vinyl floor. I looked up. The bed's curtain Rayland old track embedded in the ceiling was moving slightly, as if something invisible brushed against it. Then I noticed the indentation in the mattress. Not deep like someone sitting. Shallow, like someone standing on it with bare feet. And the air above the bed rippled faintly, as if heat rose from a body that shouldn't be there. My throat locked. My eyes burned with the urge to blink. But blinking felt dangerous, like closing my eyes in the middle of a highway. The wristband on the tray slid a fraction of an inch, not falling, sliding, as if guided by a careful finger. I backed away from the door, not turning my back, not moving too fast. The corridor lights outside looked too clean, too alive. The door opened wider, slow enough to feel deliberate. And in the gap, I saw something that made my stomach drop into a cold pit. A handprint on the inside of the door. Not fresh. Old, yellowed, like it had been pressed there decades ago and sealed under varnish. Small fingers, a child's hand. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt packed with cotton. I bolted then, the sound of my shoes too loud, too human, echoing down the corridor like a confession. When I finally looked back, the blank door was closed again. No shadow beneath it, no sign of anything. The envelope was gone. In the morning, I asked my supervisor about room 0. He stared at me for a long time like he was deciding whether I was safe to speak to. Then he leaned in, his voice low. "Don't go near that door," he said. "They sealed it for a reason." "What reason?" His eyes flicked toward the hallway as if it might be listening. "Some patients were never discharged," he whispered. "They were just filed. I quit that week. But sometimes, when I'm in a quiet room and the air suddenly turns cold, I swear I can hear it again. The soft squeak of feet on a mattress, practicing how to stand up after decades of being told to lie still. Room 0 isn't on any map because it was never meant to be found. There's a stretch of highway outside my hometown that locals don't like to name. They'll talk around it. They'll say that part by the old quarry or the bend after the pine line, like speaking the number, might summon what the asphalt has been holding. I learned about it the night my car died at mile marker 17. It was a work night. Late, the kind of late where the world feels abandoned but not asleep. I'd taken the shortcut to save 10 minutes, and those 10 minutes turned into an hour I'd never get back. The engine coughed once and went silent. The dashboard lights flickered weakly, then steadied like a heartbeat, pretending to be normal. I coasted to the shoulder beneath a line of trees that swallowed the moonlight. My phone had one bar, then none. No service. I sat there listening to the engine tick as it cooled and the night pressed in around me. At first, it was only silence. Then, it wasn't. A faint tapping started somewhere behind my car, soft and irregular, like a fingernail on glass. I turned my head and stared through the rear window. Nothing but darkness and the pale glow of my taillights fading into the trees. The tapping stopped. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I reached for the door handle to step out and check the engine. That's when my headlights went out. Not dimmed, not flickered, just off. The world snapped darker, and my car suddenly felt like a sealed box. I clicked the switch. Nothing. I tried again. Harder, like force could bring light back. Still nothing. Then, in the side mirror, I saw a faint glow in the distance, a single light moving slowly along the shoulder behind me. A flashlight. Relief hit so fast, it almost hurt. Someone was coming. A driver, a cop, anybody. The light drew closer, bobbing gently, but it didn't move like a person walking. It moved too smoothly, too level, like it was attached to something gliding rather than stepping. As it approached, my skin prickled, a warning rising from my gut without explanation. I cracked my window an inch. Cold air slipped in, smelling of wet pine and something sour beneath it. The light stopped behind my car. I couldn't see whoever held it. I waited for a knock on the window, for a voice asking if I needed help. Instead, the tapping started again, this time on the trunk. Soft, measured, tap, 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 tap. Then a pause. Tap, like someone counting. I swallowed. My throat felt too tight for sound. I grabbed my phone and tried to dial emergency services even without signal, just in case. No connection. The tapping moved from the trunk to the rear passenger door. Tap, tap. Closer. My pulse beat in my ears so loud it felt like it might leak out. I looked at the passenger window, the glass reflecting only my own face, pale and tense. And then I saw it just for a second between the trees. A shape, not fully visible, but wrong in its posture. Too tall and too still. A silhouette that looked like a person standing upright, except the head tilted too far to one side, like it was listening with its whole body. My breath fogged the glass. The shape didn't move. The flashlight beam swept across the rear window, slow and searching, as if whoever held it was trying to see inside without stepping into the light. The beam slid forward, creeping along the roofline, then down toward my driver's side window. It stopped right where my face would be. I froze. The light didn't blind me. It hovered just outside the glass, as if it didn't want to shine directly on me, as if it didn't want me to see what held it. In the corner of my eye, the mile marker sign stood a few yards ahead. White reflective numbers, 17. The sign's reflective surface caught the flashlight's glow and flared bright for a moment. In that brief reflected light, I saw something by the base of the sign. A small object, half buried in weeds. A shoe, child-sized, and beside it, a second shoe. And beside that something that looked like a bundle of fabric, dark and collapsed. My stomach turned cold. A memory surfaced, something I'd heard years ago in passing. An old rumor whispered at a gas station. A school bus accident, a fire. Kids missing. File sealed. No bodies found. The tapping on my window stopped. The air outside went still, like the world paused to listen. Then my driver's side door handle moved. Just a slight pull. Testing. My hand shot to the lock, even though I knew it was already locked. I pressed it again anyway, like an incantation. The handle pulled again, harder. The car rocked slightly. Kay felt the terror sharpen into something clean and focused. I started the engine. It didn't turn over. I tried again. The starter clicked weakly. Outside, the flashlight beam slid down the window, as if following my hands. I tried a third time, whispering words I didn't mean. The engine finally coughed and caught. The headlights burst back to life. And in that sudden flood of light, I saw what stood beside my car. A man in an old reflective vest, the kind road crews used decades ago. His face was pale and oddly smooth, like it had been washed too many times by rain. His eyes looked unfocused, not quite aimed at me. He held a flashlight, but the beam wasn't pointed at my car anymore. It was pointed at the mile marker sign, at the shoes, at the bundle of fabric. His mouth opened slightly, as if to speak, but no sound came out. Then his head turned toward me in a slow, stiff motion, and I saw his neck. The skin there was darkened in a ring, like a burned scar, like a seatbelt mark after a crash. I slammed the car into gear and tore off down the highway, tires spitting gravel. In the rearview mirror, the man didn't chase. He didn't wave. He just stood in the shoulder's edge of light, holding the flashlight steady on the mile marker, like he was keeping watch over something that never made it home. The next day, I went back in daylight with my brother, because part of me refused to believe what I'd seen. The mile marker was there. The weeds at its base were flattened, but the shoes were gone. The only thing left was a faint black stain in the grass, like something had been burned into the earth. And on the back of the mile marker sign, carved into the metal in careful letters, a sentence I didn't notice the night before. We count them so you don't have to. I never take that shortcut anymore. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone and my headlights hit a reflective sign just right, I swear I see a flashlight beam beside the road, still counting. Some mile markers don't measure distance, they measure the missing. I rented the house because it was cheap, quiet, and recently renovated, which sounded like a fresh start. The neighborhood was older, but calm. The streetlights worked, the lawns were trimmed. The kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happens until you realize that's exactly what people say when they're hiding something. The first thing I noticed inside was what wasn't there. No photos. Not in the listing, not in the house, not even faint outlines where frames had hung. The walls were too clean, as if someone had scrubbed them down to the paint itself. The closets smelled of fresh lumber and a chemical sweetness, like the scent of new cabinets trying to mask old smoke. I moved in with a few boxes and the heavy feeling you carry when you've outgrown your old life, but haven't built a new one yet. The house was silent at night, the kind of silence that should have been comforting. It wasn't. The first week, small things felt curated, like the house wanted to be seen a certain way. The bathroom mirror never fogged, no matter how hot the shower ran. The smoke detector had no dust inside it, even though the vents did. And every time I left a light on in the hallway overnight, it would be off in the morning. I blamed myself. Habit, sleepwalking. Being tired, I found the hidden closet. It was behind the coat closet, disguised as a panel in the back wall. I only noticed because one of the shelves felt loose. When I pushed it, the wood flexed and a thin seam appeared, like the house briefly forgot to hide itself. I should have stopped there. Instead, I pulled. The panel opened on stiff hinges, revealing a narrow space just big enough for someone to stand inside. The air that rolled out was cold and dry, and it smelled like paper that had been sealed away. Inside, there were no coats, no storage bins. Just a shelf. And on that shelf, a stack of photographs tied with twine. My hands tingled as if the air itself didn't want me touching them. The photos were old Polaroids, mostly with white borders yellowed at the edges. The first photo showed a family in the living room. Same living room I was standing in. A man in a plaid shirt, a woman in a dress, a little girl sitting cross-legged on the rug. They were all smiling, but it wasn't a natural smile. It looked like the smile you force when someone says, "One more," after you've already wanted to stop. I flipped to the next. Same family. Same room. The man's smile was smaller. The woman's eyes looked tired. The girl's hands were folded in her lap now, too still. I kept turning photos, my heartbeat slow and heavy. Each one was taken from the same angle, like the photographer stood in the same spot every time. Each one looked almost identical, except the family's expressions changed, gradually, like a time-lapse of something draining out. In one photo, the girl's gaze was fixed slightly to the left toward the hallway. In the next, the woman was looking that way too. In the next, the man's head had turned, his face blurred slightly as if he moved too fast during the shot. Then there was a photo where the family wasn't smiling at all. They were staring at the hallway with the kind of focus that isn't curiosity, it's dread. In the following photo, the girl was gone. The parents sat on the couch, their bodies rigid. The space on the rug where the girl had been was empty. The next photo, the mother was gone too. The father sat alone, hands clenched, staring at the hallway. And in that last photo, the hallway behind him was darker than it should be. A shadow pooled there like spilled ink. I lowered the stack. My mouth tasted like metal. I glanced toward my own hallway, the one that led to the bedrooms. It looked normal. It always looks normal until it isn't. I told myself the photos were some creepy art project, a prank, a previous tenant's weird obsession. But that night, when I turned off the living room lights and lay in bed, I heard something shift in the hallway. Footsteps. A soft, sliding sound, like fabric dragging slowly across carpet. I sat up, holding my breath. The sound stopped. Then, from the hallway, a faint click, like a camera shutter. My skin turned cold. I got up and walked to the bedroom door, opening it just enough to see out. The hallway was dark, but not fully. The nightlight I'd plugged in should have made a faint glow. It was off. And in the center of the hallway, something small sat on the floor. A Polaroid, fresh, white border, bright. I moved closer, my chest tight. The photo was still developing. The image was faint at first, then slowly darkened. It was my living room, my couch, my lamp, and me standing in the hallway. But the angle was wrong. The shot was taken from the exact spot the previous photos were taken from the corner of the living room, as if the photographer stood where the hidden closet was. In the photo, my face wasn't turned toward the camera. It was turned toward the hallway behind me. And my expression, I looked like I'd just realized I wasn't alone. I didn't sleep after that. I packed a bag and left before sunrise, not caring that my lease had 6 months left. A week later, I drove back in daylight with a friend, determined to grab the rest of my stuff. We unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled cleaner than before, like it had been aired out. The hidden closet panel was gone, replaced with a solid wall. No seam, no hinge. And on the living room wall, where the old photo angle would have been, there was a single framed picture, a new one, a Polaroid. Me, standing in the hallway. My face turned toward the dark behind me, my eyes wide with recognition, and beneath the frame, carved into the fresh paint with something sharp. A quiet sentence. We don't keep photos of what we keep. I never went back. But sometimes in a quiet room, I feel the hair rise on my arms like a flashbulb warming up. And I wonder how many houses have hidden closets full of moments that weren't supposed to survive. Some homes don't haunt you. They archive you. I signed up for the seasonal fire lookout job because I wanted solitude. No neighbors, no traffic. Just a tower in the woods, a radio, a map, and long hours watching for smoke. The tower was old built when people trusted wood and steel more than they trusted each other. The stairs creaked like a warning. The windows rattled in wind that never fully stopped. The ranger who trained me was the kind of man who didn't waste words. He showed me the radio channels, the emergency procedures, the logbook. He pointed to a metal box bolted beneath the desk. "Old stuff," he said. "Don't mess with it." Then he left, his truck fading down the dirt road until the forest swallowed the sound. That first week was peaceful, quiet enough to hear your own thoughts, which is a dangerous kind of quiet if you're not careful. I learned the rhythm of the tower. Morning haze, afternoon heat, night cold that seeped into your bones. On the 8th night, a storm rolled in with no warning. The sky turned the color of bruises. Wind slapped the windows. Thunder hit so close the tower shook like it was trying to throw me off. The power flickered and the radio crackled with static. I checked the generator. Everything was fine. But the static didn't stop. It wasn't the normal hiss of weather interference. It sounded layered, like multiple signals bleeding into each other. Under the hiss, I heard something faint. A voice, not clear. Not directed at me, just present. I leaned toward the radio, adjusting the dial. The voice sharpened for a moment, and my stomach tightened. It wasn't speaking to dispatch. It was counting, softly, repetitively. Numbers whispered like someone trying not to be heard. Then the storm hit harder, and the signal vanished under static. I sat back, heart tapping against my ribs, telling myself it was a weird, overlapped ham radio. Old frequency, atmospheric bounce. But when I looked down at the desk, the metal box beneath it was open. I hadn't opened it. Inside was a cassette tape. Label, Tower 3, -1979. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for my brain to find a reasonable explanation. Then the radio clicked by itself. A new sound came through, low and muffled. A breathing pattern, slow, controlled. Familiar in the way nightmares are familiar. You don't remember them until you're inside them again. I snapped the radio off. The tower felt too small suddenly. The windows, the walls, the narrow stairs spiraling down into dark forest. I picked up the tape with 2 fingers like it might bite. There was an old tape player on the shelf, one of those rugged ones Rangers used before everything went digital. I'd seen it, but never touched it. The tape fit perfectly. My hand hovered over the play button. Every instinct told me not to. But curiosity is its own kind of fire, and I'd come to the tower thinking I could control it. I pressed play. At first, only static and wind. Then a voicemail, young, strained. It wasn't telling a story. It was recording something as it happened. The words were low, clipped, like he was afraid speaking louder would attract attention. He described the same tower, the same desk, the same storm that rattled the windows. He said the radio wouldn't stop. He said someone kept calling from the tree line, but he couldn't see anyone when he looked out. He said the voice sounded like it was right beneath the tower, even when it came through the speaker. Then his breathing sped up. In the background of the tape, faintly, I heard a tapping sound. Wood on wood, slow and steady. Like someone knocking on the tower's support beams from below. My skin tightened. I looked down at the floor, at the hatch that led to the stairs. The tapping started in real time, from below, matching the tape. I froze. On the tape, the young man whispered something that made my stomach drop. He said he'd found an old logbook entry about Tower 3. He said there was a fire decades ago, and a lookout disappeared during a storm. He said the official report claimed he abandoned post, but the locals said something else. They said he was taken. Then, on the tape, the young man fell silent. The tapping grew louder in the background, closer, and through the tape speaker. A second sound entered, soft footsteps on metal stairs, ascending. My throat went dry. I stared at the hatch, waiting for the latch to rattle. The footsteps on the tape became clearer, and then, impossibly, I heard them beneath my feet in the tower on the actual stairs. The tape was no longer just a recording. It was a map. It was telling the tower what to do next. I lunged for the tape player to shut it off, but as my fingers touched the stop button, the tape voice whispered one last sentence so close to the microphone it felt like breath on my ear. He said, "If you hear the stairs, don't look down." The hatch latch clicked, slowly, like someone was testing it from below. I backed away until my shoulders touched the window glass. The storm outside flashed lightning, and for a split second, the forest lit up like a photograph. In that flash, I saw something at the base of the tower. A figure standing in the rain, looking up. Holding a flashlight pointed at my windows, but the beam wasn't aimed to help. It was aimed like a signal. Like a beacon, the hatch lifted a fraction of an inch. Cold air poured out, smelling of wet soil and old smoke. I didn't scream. Screaming would have made it real in a way I couldn't take back. I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled the cassette tape out and snapped it in half. The sound stopped instantly. The tapping below ceased. The hatch settled back down with a soft, disappointed click. The radio stayed silent. Outside, the lightning flashed again, and the figure at the base of the tower was gone. I sat on the floor until dawn, staring at the broken tape like it was a dead insect that might still crawl. When the ranger returned later that day, I told him I was quitting. He didn't argue. He only looked at the broken tape pieces in my hand and nodded once, like he'd seen this before. As I left, he finally spoke. "Those tapes," he said quietly, "weren't made to remember. I didn't ask what they were made for, because I already knew. They were made to replay. Some recordings don't capture the past, they reopen it.